Hi, good morning or afternoon, whatever time it is. It's still morning here. Okay, so I just wanted to see if they get follow through like this. They didn't really reset the odds here. It's kind of the exact same, just a little bit higher. So what that tells me is they could potentially push this a bit more, but it looks like it could kind of grind just based on how this PA kind of formed. I want to see what they do by the 124 through 130 period though, just in case we do get some structure breaks around here. We did have buyback results, I think. I don't know if there's anything else still. I don't think they're still speaking. Let me go back and double check. Oh, yeah, they are. I don't know if you guys saw this. Okay. So yeah, usually when we don't have confined days like this, it does take a while for us to get back to, let's say, like a 34, 44 point range, because they didn't really give us the full break, but it's this area that we'd have to get back over, closer to like 8.5, 8.6. And so far they're struggling a little bit with that. And I wanted to see if they reset odds for the mid sessions here, and they kind of did, but not really, like not in a sense that this was like some crazy reset for 114 and 115. Do you see what I'm saying? Like it kind of just brought it back to the exact price, just a little bit higher. So it tested and closed above this close, tested the high, but didn't really get like a very big break. This could hint that maybe it just becomes like a afternoon where they grind price just a little bit higher, but they're still keeping it within range, which I think makes sense. We're not going to really see any constructive breaks until we get over that 8.4 to 8.6 area. And I already mentioned earlier this afternoon or this morning that it seems like we're probably working with ranges today that are not confined. What that means is usually on days like this, it looks like a very obvious continued short, right? Like on a daily, like this looked like it was going to bearish engulf. It looked pretty scary. They broke 33 points. They broke 44 points, but they don't usually break fully down. And it's usually based on like, it's usually based on dynamics of the market and the trade. So we have CPI tomorrow. I listed a bunch of things, but like, okay, like this, for instance, they were trying to hold earlier, couldn't quite retrace, but they did get over 7.7, 7.1, 6.8, 6.6 back here. Then they pushed it down a little bit further. You can kind of see this is now where they're holding and where they started holding 34 point ranges back here. I don't know if you guys can see that, but there are some breaching sticks, and usually this is the case to kind of offset the range, let's say off open, which I think was around 5.5 to 7.5 points when I looked at it. So that makes sense, because if we're looking at it from this kind of stance, off opening ranges, okay, are you guys paying attention? This is a little bit confusing, so pay attention. if we're looking at it from like opening ranges to, let's say, the morning high ranges and the kind of range that we breached beneath, I guess you could say, it was close to like 7-ish points. Okay. And usually sessions like this are just like offsetting, so I would bet that this is pretty close to where they stalled this morning. Does that make sense to you guys? It's kind of like they kind of take it just over and they kind of take it just beneath, and they're not confined areas, so you won't get exact ranges of like 34, 44, 66. Do you get what I'm saying? It kind of just keeps you on the edge, but it's because of the way that they've structured it. So like if they had fully broke down, this is 39 points, mid ranges, right? Remember how I always say like we have, this is a mid-range session, this is a mid-range session, this is a really obvious mid-range session. So like basically half of 34 and 44. Does that make sense? Half of 44 and 66. So like if they wanted to fully push this down from high ranges, let's say, because they hit like 50 or 48 points here, okay, they're not going to give you like the full break, but you could get partial range. So 48 points, is that really a confined area for us? No, right? Like that's not really a spot that we'd look at and be like, oh, okay. But if they start holding it post mid-session after 12:30, do you see what they're doing after 12:30? Do you guys see this? What are they doing after 12:30? They're sustaining 34 points beneath highs, okay? After 12:30. It's good to kind of pay attention to these things just to see what they do. Okay. Same with this here afternoon. Versus off like opening range, which was here. Where was the open today? 9-1. Okay. Do you see this? It's not the easiest to kind of look at, but do you see that? So like off of real-time highs, let's say, do you see these structure breaks after 12? How they're trying their best to hold? Because these were more confined areas off 5-7, 5-8, right? These areas are not so confined. And usually that's the case if it aligns with the differential between real-time highs, right? And then maybe like these overnight highs. They should be around that 5.5 to like 7.5 range, whatever we said. They're not going to be that much different. And it kind of just depends on the ranges that we're using. So if this was, oh, this is a little bit, hold on. This should be closer to here. Kind of like here. Okay. So if we looked at this off like a 33-point range, which would be around 5.975. Let me know if this makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, then tell me, because obviously I want it to make sense. Okay, give or take, it's like roughly, I don't know what the morning high was. I think it might have been 0.5. So here, okay. Does that make sense to you guys? I don't know how else to explain this, because they're not really easy sessions to explain. Okay. So yeah, they're just kind of like the difference in range too between the midpoints, because usually when you go mid-range, it's not the full 10 points, right? Because we have 33, 34, 43, 44, correct? So you'll get like 6, 7, 8 points, because it's like you're going in between. And that's why you'd get like 40, 39, because otherwise we would have had odds to go all the way back to yesterday's lows, right? Off highs. Today's highs on a 66 to 68 point ratio, you guys, is linked back to yesterday's lows. So, and that's obviously not a coincidence. Today's real-time highs are linked to 68.20s. Do you guys think that that's a coincidence? Probably not, okay? Today's real-time open is linked back to our 68, 22, 23, 24 area, which could be a lot of risk if they took it back there today just because of what? So this is where I start having, I have to actually use my brain. So I'm like, okay. Even though that's a more calculated range to bring it back to, is that what they really want to do? Okay. And that's why I say sometimes like trading is like dynamic. And it's like adaptive and it's changing conditions and it's like you have to also have an understanding of the market. Like it's not just like, okay, here's your calculation, go ahead. That's not how it works. Okay. So far I can tell that they've already started making this quite pinnable. What did I say the odds were for today? Especially if we don't really get like big breaks by these mid sessions. We did break 1722 points, but they brought it mid-range. They didn't bring it to 33, 34 points. What could they be doing here then? Yeah, gold and silver are really breaking. We'll talk about gold in a bit because this was a really nice cleared break off these areas that we discussed last week. And it's basically coming back to that. On this chart, I have it back to our 4382, but on this chart here, it's this 4227. And I think we said with GC, it's closer to this area here. And we said we could just use these offsets, remember? So like if you're going back here off these bars, this would be an overhead. Do you see that? You could use 83.9 ratios on this. So like if you want to measure off this candle here, okay, these would be the areas for gold. Whoever's trading gold today, these would be like the ranges that you'd work with. So it's around 4221. It should be the same ranges that we looked at before, like on our actual gold chart. And then once you clear these areas, so actually maybe we'll just mark them on here so that we have them. I don't know if these are exact because I'm obviously not measuring it, but off this area here, like this candle here, it's definitely closer to this area here. So this is probably the overhead today on this, and probably the area it needs to break to get those structure ranges. You use that range 83.9 on gold, okay? Because this is, and use it off your previous candles, like measure off these candles here. So that means the next time it comes back, you'd want to start breaking 4306, 4300. Okay, do you see that? Those would give you the best odds of clearing coming back to all-time highs. So who's trading gold? And this is the GC chart, but it's kind of funny that this aligns with these areas here anyway, like this 4227 area. So okay, let's see what they do here. Let's see what they do. So 130, 32, trying to make a bit of a break. Still stalling off 3.2. This period does have a little bit of a better odd to break a tiny bit higher just because of where they closed. But again, this is a very back and forth type of session. So And usually when things like this start happening, guys, premiums start to really die down. So I wouldn't over trade sessions like this. Like, you should be looking at further dated probably. Banks did really good this morning too. Goldman was pretty strong, so was Citi and WFC. They're kind of turning around a little bit now on some of these, so maybe this could help the market. Crude had a big reversal back down after hitting that range. Same with XOM off that 120 target yesterday, 120.76. I thought that XOM could maybe get a piercing candle. It's trying, but still a little bit tough on that one. So, and then I forget who asked. I don't remember when we looked at the silver chart, but let's see if we can find it in here, actually. Silver. I don't remember, but we looked at it last month. Maybe one of you guys can find the charts in the Discord, because I couldn't find them. And I share obviously a lot, so. Might have been back in September, actually, when we went back and looked at it. Or July or something, I don't remember. I think it was September. Or October, like mid-October. I do know that Booth was looking at it a lot too, so he might have some charts in there too. That's when we really looked at gold, but if I find them, I'll repost them. Otherwise, we can quickly analyze it in a bit. I just want to see if ES breaks during these intervals here, first and foremost. Let me set some alerts. I think what we did is we looked at it on that 11 month and said it was flagging on the 11 month. So, like, long story short, it basically could see like the same type of range that it had on this reversal. Do you see that, of like 37 points? I think this was like the very base of this. Like, see where the flag starts right here. So I think we said silver can get to like $59, $60 based on just that small aspect, okay, on this kind of break. And maybe 65, and I think we said that this runs until end of year, or like till December 1st, so it's relative to how much range we hit by end of this month. Can't really see it on there, and then it did have the 10 month that is kind of continuing, and I think the 9, so kind of like this range here, but that was the basis of it. And I think we just looked at a very base level fib for this clearance break right here. So you can probably measure these same intervals. I don't think it's gonna be that much different. I think we basically said that we have to hit 56 to 59 by end of this month to get potentially 65. I think that's all we said, and this could easily be like a 1, 2, 3, 4 bar continuation. So we said that we could see silver continue to ramp until, and I said the same thing with gold. So 1, 2, 3, until at least like 20. I think the minimum would be 1, 2, 3, 4 until October of next year. So it's a pretty big range break, and then If they really move this, then that's where you could see like the actual, you see like that range that we measured right here? This is where you could see a break off of the actual candle. Does that make sense? Like off of here, off of here, off of here, and that's how you could get those bigger price targets to like 71, 72. I don't think that that's like completely not probable. Like 37 points on this bar would be right around here. Okay, so that's what we said with silver. It's kind of straightforward. So this runs until month end, basically. And gold is the same thing, by the way. So with gold, this is also running off these candles, okay? So gold is also a durational trade until next year, okay? If they keep this pushing, the biggest range in frame would be that 11 month, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. That means that gold could keep moving until end of next year. Same with silver. And I know it sounds crazy, but I think I'm pretty smart. I think my levels are pretty accurate. Like 43.82 stalling here is insane. So if we take out 4,382 on gold, that's headed to 5,200, I think we said. And we've been pretty accurate with our turnarounds on gold too. Like on those flips. Where was it? Here? No, not this template. This one. Use these templates. Okay, we had big flip dates here on the 10th. Do you see this? So measure from there to here, because that's basically the duration of this trade. Yeah, I set the alerts because we had odds at this time. Okay, so 8-4 break is good. We still need 8-5, 8-6. This is kind of the bigger area here. So I just want to see if they can try triggering these ranges here before 2, or if they're going to get stuck. If they get stuck, remember how I said we could break a little bit higher during this period? Do you guys see it now? Like the slight break. So based on what they did off that 115 period right here, how they took it just a bit higher, this to me implied that, okay, that means that we can maybe break about 2 points higher during this hourly interval, or maybe sustain about 2 points higher. I know it's a really like small amount of range, but do you see why they could maybe stall 8-4 here? Okay, so it's going to be a pretty important point in the session to see if they end up holding, breaking. So far they're doing a good job holding these areas here, especially in terms of like open, close, highs, lows. Do you see this? From 1 o'clock to here. And they didn't breach, so that's good. Does this make sense to you guys? So all you really have to do to break this kind of trend is take out 8-4. I like that they held higher lows here too. That's actually pretty good in this area here. Like, so what I mean is, you see this range in here? In terms of that? Because we could have gone back to here and it would have been fine. They held by like 2.5 points, which means they probably broke by 2.5 points. Isn't that crazy? That's actually insane. Look at that. That's the differential between the risk that we could have afforded back to 70.5, and then where they actually sustained here. So 2.5 point ratios 2.5 point ratios off those highs, or previous highs from the hour, was right here, 8425. 8425 is the overhead. Do you guys understand now why I was saying like this period they could maybe grind us a little bit higher? But there's going to be some overhead around 8.4. So 8425 is the exact overhead. And if they could break probably close to like these periods here, that area before 2, then that's when we could start increasing. Otherwise, we're not really required to do too much. How many points is this off lows, guys? Are we finally breaking those increments of like at least 32 points? Yeah, we are. That's good. 32 point break is good. At least this gives us some odds of getting a 33, 34 point extension. Even if they only take us back like 38 points or 44 points or whatever. The really cool thing is too, is when I looked at this, if they break this back to 8.8, that's like these mid ranges, but if they break this back, like 44 points, let's say, that's pretty close to these highs, or like these pre-market early morning highs. But the odds for this hour were all they really have to do is just try testing that 6.884, and then they could just do it back and forth, which is exactly what they're doing. And this just keeps ranging back and forth because they know that there isn't too much pressure to go any higher than 8425. I'm just going to change this though to 8425 since that's more calculated. And you see why this would make it so hard to be able to even capture continuation trades on days like this, because you immediately sell off when you hit the required condition. So I wasn't expecting us to break higher above 8.4. Does that make sense to you guys or no? And it's mostly based on where they closed the hour, what they did at mid-session, where they held the lows, the day of the week. We don't have any flip dates today. There's not really good odds. We have a potential catalyst tomorrow. Okay, and if they want to limit range for last 2 hours of the day, then they can't really take it too high, too fast. They have to really measure exactly what they're doing here. And that's what they're doing. Obviously, if we break 33, 34 points before this hour ends, then we have pretty good odds for 2 to 3 p.m. Do we have anything happening at 3 o'clock? I didn't see anything. At 2 o'clock, we have the Treasury statement. Yeah, that's what I saw too. So that could also be a reason why they kind of just stall range today. I've also noticed that those offsets were pretty close to what most of these reductions have been, like around 7 points every time. 7 to 8 points. But premiums are definitely decaying because we hit higher during this period, and premiums were actually a few points lower, especially if you're looking at like at the money, like 684, 683. Oh, that's nice. I love having people. You guys were. How many of these fake accounts are there? I just want to see what the ranges were. Off mid-session again, and the 12:59 to 1 p.m. session, because I want to see if they're going to try sustaining this area here before 2, or if they're going to break down the structure. Pretty important that they at least try holding here. Here's the 150. And we want to see if we have any progress made during this period. So what would you guys think would be progress made during this period, which could give us an odd of breaking a little bit higher? So, and they did do that off the 5-9, and then like the where was it, that 114 stick? Remember how I said they broke like a little bit higher? So it gave us odds of breaking like 2.5 points higher. So what would you guys think we'd have to do for this candle close? Right here. And we're starting to get very shy on like the ranges that we're working with anyway. So if they did something similar, let's say they took us up to 2.5. Do you see how they're being so strategic about this? Because that would be like 4-point breaks right here. Do you see that? And it sounds crazy, but they're basically working with 2-point intervals, 2 to 2.5 point intervals per hour from mid-session. So why do you guys think that is? Why would they work with 2.5 to 2.25 point intervals per hour? Especially if they've got, let's say, 3 hours left in the day. Hint, hint. Nope. You guys are way smarter than that. Stop giving basic answers. You guys are not, you're not basic traders. No, no, no. No, no, no. You have 3.5 hours, okay? Okay? What was our offsets? How many points? Roughly. Limiting range, yes, but I want a more precise answer. I want like exact ranges. I want to know that you guys understand what they're doing by taking those intervals and dividing them by the hour. What was our interval? Think about it. What was our interval that we talked about? What was the offset? How many points? How many points was the offset? That's keeping us unconfined. How many points was it? I know you guys know this. There's no way you guys don't know this. We just talked about it. No, the offset. Between lows and highs, what's the offset? That's making this unconfined. I'm actually starting to believe you guys don't even listen to like anything that I even say on the stream at this point. Okay, yes, LI. 6.75 to 7.5, 7.75-ish, okay? No, she's right. This is the right answer, okay? Okay, so if you take that range and you divide it by the remaining time, let's say 3.5 hours, okay, that should roughly give you the range per hour, okay? So, and that's exactly what we equated when we subtracted the closing price off mid-session and the hourly intervals, okay? It was 2.25 to 2.5, correct? Okay. Let's go back here. Hold on. Let me close a bunch of shit. Okay. You guys know that this is the offset, right? We already talked about this. This is the offset. Everyone's in agreement that this is the offset, roughly. Okay? The thing is I copy paste everything. So like, okay, those are our offsets. Perfect. These were the offsets that we saw occur based on where they actually opened and closed. Okay, so we knew. That's how we got 84.25 or whatever. And that's how we figured that there's a higher low, and that was the offset that they held 2.5 points higher. We had risk down to 70.50, which is why they took it up above highs. You're measuring up highs, open, close. Okay? If you take that same exact interval, and now the offset is a differential between 8.6, which is our 34-point break. That's why they're doing it that way. So if you had a remaining amount of time of 3.5 hours, okay, and you're dividing that up by 3.5 hours, what does that give you? The easy thing to say is, oh, this is stops, this is chop, this is whatever, but don't you want to know the exact way it's trading and like the exact metrics it's trading in and why? Like that's the most important thing. So what are they doing? You have 3.5 hours left from that time that those intervals started, from mid-session, let's say. Okay? Or like maybe 3 hours and 45 minutes if you want to be exact. Okay? But from 1:15 till close, okay? How many points can you move in intervals by? If that's the offset that you're working with. If you went 7.5 divide by even, let's say, 3.75, what does that give you? Or if you went 7.75 divided by 3.5. I think this is the more accurate number because I think it was closer to 7.75 for the offset. Yes, okay, so 2.25. Okay, so, and that's exactly what we figured was the case when we measured this earlier. That's why we're moving roughly 2 to 2.25 points. Does that make sense? I'm not going to go into deep detail like this every single day, but today's a bit of a slower session, so I have the time to show you guys, okay? But that's why they're doing it that way, because they know that they have to measure very cautiously because they're only working with 7.75 point intervals, okay? off areas that could expand us. What area breaking would expand us this afternoon? Here's the real test to see if you guys are paying attention. What area would expand us if they were to break that range this afternoon? No, not really. I'm going to show you guys something too. Yeah, around there, around 8.6, 8.7, okay? Because that technically would be the 7.75 or 6.75 off our mid-session candles here. Okay, what else would that be? If they broke this area here. Do you guys see the confluence? Does that break the offset? Yes. Yeah, exactly, Snack. But it's also the 34-point break. Do you see the alignment? Usually when you break 34 points, you typically get big breaks, okay? So does that make sense? Okay, so this is our overhead, not opening range. You don't have to break opening range to break. All you have to do is break here. That's it, this area here. So currently right now they're stuck at that 84.25. And if they want to keep this pinnable and not break those offsets, they'll keep it beneath 8.6. But above, probably above 6.8. Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, it is, but this is obviously a way more advanced way of looking at it. That's going to be a bit more, like, precise. It's easier to be like, oh, we could get back to the zone or back to OR, but I'm trying to show you guys the actual, like, metrics or the exact metrics of, like, what you have to break and why, okay? And how they're linked. Okay, so that being said, how long could it take to get to this area? Up here. In between here. And think about what they just did here too, by the way. I said to pay attention to what they do at 59 and 2 in relevance to these intervals here. Where was it? Here. And yeah, here. Where are you getting 8.25? Do you see what they did here? So our 1259 stick closed at 687925, open at 6879. Okay? We technically closed 0.5 lower. What could that mean for the odds during this period potentially? Maybe. It's still above 7.8, which is good. But what could that mean for this period? Maybe. I usually give things like the first like 5 minutes. We're gonna watch 204, 207. And usually just to see if they can get some better structure breaks. So, 7975 retraced off that 4-minute break, so they tried getting it back to that same exact range for that 2 or 1 p.m. period and then stalled. I'm asking you guys a question though. What does that imply for this period, for this hourly period, based on what they just did there, and what they did just before 2 o'clock? And I can already gauge that this could be the potential PA for this next hour. They didn't just delay; they did something else. Something changed this hour. Okay, what changed this hour? They didn't progress, they did something else. Nope. This is the first hour since mid-session that they closed a little bit lower, okay? By like 0.5. So they compressed, okay? Range decreased. What does that do? That could make it pinnable. You're not wrong about that, right? But and it could delay things, but do you see how they could potentially have volatility during this hourly period now? Does that make sense to you guys? Like, I want to make sure that you guys are understanding this. And then that's how you can start gauging that this is probably going to become a pinnable afternoon now. Well, I was just watching the 59 stick in comparison to here. I didn't pull up the 30-minute. So a good example of this too is like even at the money contracts, like even though we're trading at near highs, I guess, like in terms of like coming off lows, these contracts would start trading near lows. So that's how you know that your premiums start to really decay, range starts to become very limited, and this is becoming exactly what we said it was going to be, which is what? And we said this since the morning. They're probably just going to try resetting the pins, and they're probably just going to try keeping this closer to core ranges, right? And stay core bound. And repinning core areas or the zone. It's exactly what we talked about this morning. That's what they're doing. I'd be surprised if they didn't do that. Okay, I'm just gonna mute myself, guys, okay? I'll just have the stream on. There isn't really much going on, especially during this hour. This could be a more volatile period, so they could break structures. I think retesting 8-4 first, though, would help us in terms of fighting off volatility. So hopefully they can at least retrace back up first before deciding if they want to come back and break the 6-6, 6-8 area, because this is going to be a huge spot to hold this afternoon. 8-6, 8-5 could obviously still be in play. However, this hourly period's odds decrease just slightly, not by much, but just a little bit. And this is definitely becoming a pinnable session to reset yesterday's pin off 7-4, which is why we're trading right around opening ranges and closing ranges. So keep in mind, since they reduced this period, I was thinking that it could be a two-directional period where they come back, try testing 6.8. They held 6.8, so that's good. By that 220, 224, maybe they can try coming back and breaking now by that offset. It might not be a full break. Maybe they make a lower high since they closed a little bit lower. Does that make sense? So they take it a little bit lower, maybe close it a little bit lower than they did during that last period. Okay. Like maybe closer to here. And that's only if they can sustain here and try to come back and retrace. Otherwise, that 6.866 is still at risk of being back tested. So 7,450 is that overhead. That's why I had that little arrow mark there. But it looks like they're extending this a little bit. Kind of want to see if they can break this before that 230 window. Do you guys understand this period or no? So this period had odds of volatility both ways just because it closed a bit lower, meaning they can easily take out these structures here, okay? But maybe they hold this one, so they can take out the higher lows here, but maybe hold this low here. And holding that low there could give it an odd of either making a slightly lower high or a slightly higher high, okay? But either way, it still wouldn't meet the conditions of like 8.6. Does that make sense? It could just be closer to like 8.475 or something, like the 50-cent offset, whether it's 50 cents higher or lower. Let me know if this makes sense to you guys. It's kind of a sideways hour, this period. And it could be just to restrict things until end of session today, if that makes sense. And that, see, that makes sense too. Look, 1.75 and we had a 0.50 reduction. So 2.25 minus 0.5, 1.75. Isn't that interesting? That's so cool. So maybe that's exactly what we're talking about, that reduction right here. So either they could take it out maybe just a tiny bit higher or a tiny bit lower. And that's, I guess, if they hold this range. So that was a pretty calculated area then that they held. 1.75. They could also afford, I guess, to take it 0.5 beneath this. It's just a really sideways hour is what it's going to be, with obviously the risk at 6668. Let's see if they try holding this area here. It's a pretty big spot. I was trying to measure off the lows and off those intraday highs just to see if they would try to break back over a 17-point range just to prevent it from getting the bigger structural breakdowns. So that'd be like coming back over here, which they did, but I think it needs at least breaks back over like this 13-point ratio here, because this is kind of like breaking right in between. Does that make sense? Like, look, this is like right in between here. And now we're starting to hit the last 30 minutes of this hour anyway, so $3.6 is pretty important to see if they get this back over 7.1. Also, we still have time for them to try bringing it back to that 7.8, 7.9. I don't know if they could get it back to 8.1, 8.3 during this next 25 minutes, but at least back to this area here so it just stabilizes. Does that make sense? By end of the hour, just to see if they put odds back in play for 3 p.m. to 4 p.m., which I know isn't really very much range, but it's just to kind of keep things afloat, basically, is all it is. So 3.6 trying to break, 3.2, 3.3 held range. We'll see if they get continuation sticks here. Probably important that they get somewhat of a V-shaped reversal here, especially off the 6.6 price point. At least back to like this area here. And probably buy that 345 or 245 window, just so that it gives it odds to nest there for those 15 minutes before 3 o'clock. It also could give it an odd of doing what, guys? Off 6.6. Don't get this wrong, please. You guys got so many questions wrong today. What could this give this an odd of doing here if they hold off 6.6? And if they can bring it back to, let's say, 7.4, 50, 7.6 by before 3.45. What could they have an odd of doing before 3? Potentially. And this would basically be the same thing on both ends. Because this period had higher odds of being volatile and two-directional. So what could it give us odds of doing? Basically trying to retest that 7.9, right? Maybe getting the lower high around 8.1 or 8.3. Or potentially here, okay, a lot of this is going to depend on what they do over the next 4 minutes, 5 minutes. So let's see. Does that make sense to you guys? And that's what will set us up for that last hour to see where they can pit us by. This is definitely not an easy session. It is pretty hard because it's very back and forth, but you don't even have to trade it. It's even just managing it or monitoring it is, I think, good for learning purposes too. So what do you guys think? Where do you guys think they take this to by 2:45 p.m.? Let's see. Give me a number. Or better yet, where do you guys think they can take this to before 3? What do you guys think the high for this hour is going to be? Well, give me both odds. What if they fail to get back over 7476? Then what? You could be headed back to that 5.8, 5.7, 5.9 area. Okay. So you definitely need to, at a very minimum, break like this 7476 wall. Okay. Definitely need some volatility here, so this is a good stick. They're trying to defend the 7,450 wall. It's not, this isn't an area you want to stall, so you need to take out 7,450, 7.6. I would say before 340 or 245, just to keep odds in play. Okay, so give me the areas, guys. Where do you think they could take it to if they take out 7,450, 7.6 over these 15 minutes? So we figured that at the very least, they could come back to that 7.8 to 7.9, 7.5. That's kind of the area that they stalled earlier. They could do maybe lower highs closer to 8.1, 8.3. Or they could slightly take out the high around 84.75, 85. Okay, so I feel like those are the only probabilities, and I think a lot of it's going to be based on the kind of range breaks we see here by that 245, 248 window. Let's set this a tiny bit higher. Okay. But are you guys picking up on the trade now? Like, are you fully understanding this hour had lower odds, this hour had odds to have higher volatility, to break higher lows, to break structure, but also to still come back and be two directional and retrace, or flatten by 3 p.m. Flattening by 3 p.m. just means taking it right back to where it started in the first place, which is back here, okay? And setting it back up again for 3 to 4. This hour also had odds of like fully breaking down structure if it went back beneath that 6.566. So far stalling that 7,450 again ahead of 245. And that 248. So what do you guys think? Do you think that there's some pressure here between this window of 245, sorry, to 248? This is a really good session too, by the way. Like pinnable sessions like this are very good just to get an understanding of price action really and range so that you can actually pick up on it. Start watching in the second intervals just to see if they apply some pressure here. They definitely are playing with fire here too, since they took it beneath 6.6 but held 6.5, because breaks beneath 6.5 is what takes you back to the means. There is a bit of a 5-minute flag that I noticed here too. Okay, let's see. Who here thinks that they could take out some range? They stalled 7,450. They still have a little bit of a window here between like 248 and 250, I would say, since they technically have until 3. But I feel like they reduced odds a little bit by not taking out 7.6, which puts a bit of pressure between these next 2 minutes. Well, it is a pinnable session, so really, if they don't want to do shit here, they don't have to. Like, they could just keep it at 7-4 all afternoon and pin the close. It's the exact same scenario as where we started the session and closed the session yesterday. Which you're basically flat on the session is what this is. It's just a flattening session, okay, to test both sides. AKA a doji. Anyway, I fully covered. I only have a few contracts left for tomorrow, and that's it off these entries that we had here. But if we don't start getting some structure breaks back up here before 3, then I'll probably just fully cover. Oh. There are some tiny bear structures too that formed. This looks very pinnable, guys, into the close. Probably won't stream the last hour if that's the case, because I'm just wasting time at that point. I feel like if they really wanted to break, they would have done it during this period here. We did say that we had... I know we have a Fed speaker at 4 after the close, but then we also have... Yeah, I think it's just at 4. I think that's it. We don't have any other catalysts this afternoon. Which could suffice us not doing anything. So risk would definitely increase then from 3 to 4 if they are keeping this closer to 6-6, 6-8 ahead of 3 o'clock. Especially if they take it back to the means, then I would say that they could have those ranges back in play. I would prefer that they keep it in this area here though for the close, just to keep it flat on the session today. We'll see if they can try getting some breaks back over this 7-4 area or not. I'll probably end the stream then at 3. Because there's no point in pinning something that's, or pinning, there's no point in streaming a pinnable close. And I feel like we already know that we could be capped up here. And they could pin in this area here. And then lower risk if we break beneath 6-5, 6-6. I just want to see if they at least try retesting off that 2-4 or 5-4. And then if they try negating some of these nasty bear patterns that flip at 5-6, which would mean breaking at like 55, because there was another flag that formed off the 9-minute, which could try putting it back into play, but they'd have to have some pretty good structure breaks off 5-5, 5-4, 5-6 for that to be the case. And the sideways back and forth continues. Where do you guys think they'll take this to by 3? Really? Faith is restored just by going back to 7-3? I think they need at least over 7-450. Ideally a break at that 7-5, 2-5, 7-6. Like if they can get structure at least back up here, then okay. You're in a little bit of a better position. You know, to bring it back to reset for 3 o'clock. This needs to get at least here to try putting those resets back in play for here. And that just flattens the next hour again. Well, they need higher than that. And they have to do it off these 5-5, 5-6, 5-4 sticks, like I said. Okay, so 5-4, not bad. Back over 7-3, 7-5, but still not quite high enough. 5-5, 5-6 is what had odds, so let's see. When does that 9-minute flip? Because that was flagging at 3. And that 11-minute, 3:05. So maybe they could get some structure breaks here. I'm kind of tired though. I'm dehydrated too. I didn't drink water. Okay, let's see if we get that 7,450 break here at 5.6, just to at least put these odds back in play of resetting the hour back to that 7.8, 7.9. They closed the 2 p.m. period here at 7.8, 7.5 and opened at 7.9, so it kind of reduced odds for this period. There's the 7.4, 7.5, 7.5 test here. I have an alert at 75.25 set. This would be the ideal time to do it too, off 5.6, just so it opens up the window a little bit before 3. Based on those candles though, there's some odds at 301 and 305. So even if they don't break at 3 or before 3, it looks like they have a bit of a window here just before then. I don't really have like super high hopes though that they'll get like big structure breaks, but we'll see. There's 7525 stall. They're still kind of stuck in this box here. This seems like a potential break after 3, but I could be wrong. Isn't that crazy how big of a wall this area is here at like 7,450, 7,525, 7.6? Remember that these were the areas from yesterday? Just in case you guys forgot. I feel like you guys did. These are the 33, 34 point ranges from yesterday. This area here. So if you can't even break yesterday's calculated high ranges, how are you going to break today's? Do you know what I'm saying? Oops. No, this looks pretty unpromising. Or like I said, maybe they try breaking after 3. Yeah, I know. If I said that like an hour ago, then I probably have a reason for saying that, just because I can tell what kind of PA this is. I'll give it till 3 though. I'll wait till like this 301, 305 period, but I don't know. I just feel like they really reduced odds this afternoon, so there's no point. At least they're holding 6-8 here before 3. Well, there's the odds are 301, 305. So if they wanted to keep it stuck, they could just break after 3 technically, but and that's what they failed to do after 2, which was why the volatility increased when they stalled 204, 205, 210. So maybe the odds after 3 this time are a bit better for retracing upside, but this isn't like a good risk reward trade. This is the 3 o'clock stick, right? All right, guys, I think I'm gonna call it a day and just focus on some of the positions I have into tomorrow. I'll catch you guys tomorrow, and I do plan to put something out tonight. Maybe just something very baseline though, because we're kind of just still sitting still at these core ranges. It'll depend on where we close.